grab.
Wow.
Limerick, late night live from 55. Welcome to ULTI.TV, our pre-tournament show for EUC. I'm here with 5/7 of the wonderful commentary crew we've got. We're still waiting on Hannah Pendlebury and Lou Burgess to show up. But I've got the wonderful Christina Obermeyer, Charlotte Terrasson, Mr. Lorcan Murray, and Benji Reese, all here to give you the straight goods before this kicks off.
We can just ignore Milan in the background. He's not here.
He's not part of the 5/7. We're here to chew some fat. I will tell you, this is not a predictions show. We already did that 3 months ago. Our feet still lodged in our mouths about that one.
Can we not go back and change those?
I don't think so. We are bound to it. However, you at home, wherever you are, you can get onto the prediction show competition. There are some great prizes to be won. Tokai Eurodisc Force always putting up the prizes, so we thank them for that. Get on to the patron and let's hear what you have to say. That said, we're going to start this show off with a little bit of informative action coming first from Mr. Lorcan Murray, the man here from Limerick in his hometown. Lorcan, we did this on the last show, but I think the pertinent information. Tell us a little bit about these divisions and how they're going to go down.
Sapning Kid! Mr. Informative, that's what they know me as, and that is a very accurate way of describing my position on this team. So just to really quickly go through it, because we've got some peculiar numbers when it comes to it. In the open division, we are starting off with 4 pools, and then we move on to 3 power pools with no carryover. And I think that's going to be relevant as you go through it. The top 2 in the power pools both get quarterfinal buys. There's 4 total quarterfinal buys up for grabs. And the third power pool, top 2 get into pre-quarters. So even if you make an absolute Hames, which is a local term for do not perform to the utmost of your expectations, then you still have the opportunity through that third power pool to get yourself into quarterfinal bye. So it is far from over at any point for any team, because of course those wins from losses from the first round don't carry through. The women's side is fairly similar. 4 pools, except for the fact that first pool is kind of like a reseeding pool almost. It's just a total freebie. And then you move into the second power pools. These games, again, kind of determine things a little bit more as they will shake as people go into the final 3 selection of power pools, at which point it gets a lot like the open division. Again, the games do not carry over. There's 3 power pools. There are, again, 4 quarterfinal buys, 4 pre-quarters. So at that point, the open and the women's divisions look very similar. In the mixed, however, it is business from the start of the week, and any kind of mistake you're going to make is going to be punished, something that we will talk about a little bit later on. There are 4 pools, 3 pools of 4, 1 pool of 5, because, of course, you know, who doesn't love doing maths? And the 3 power pool games, or those pool games are carried over to the 3 power pools, which will be critical. The top 1 of the 2 main power pools, so there's only 2 quarterfinal buys up for grabs, will go straight through, as the rest will play off. There are only 2 quarterfinal buys at all across it and 6 pre-quarterfinals. So the most pre-quarterfinals, the least quarterfinal buys available in the mixed division, which just shows you it's going to take an awful lot of hustle and an awful lot of fighting from the start of the mixed division. Whereas there'll be an opportunity for some acclimatizing as you make your way through the open and women's divisions.
Wonderful, Lorcan, particularly the women's, I would say. I hope you guys all wrap your heads around that now and you know exactly how these things shake out. Benji, you're going to break down the streaming schedule. Let everybody at home know exactly what they can consume and how. Take it away, Benj.
Well, ULTI.TV are streaming 2 pitches all week, assuming that the weather allows us, which, why wouldn't it? We're in sunny Limerick. Am I right, guys? Guys?
That's a title, not a promise.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So Saturday, tomorrow, we have 2 showcase games for you on the main pitch. The tournament opens with Germany versus Ireland mixed. 2 of the favourites for the tournament going at it in the opener. In the women's division at 5 o'clock, over on the VO field, it is Austria versus Belgium in the women's division, while on the main showcase field, we are streaming Ireland again versus Great Britain in the women's division. Almost like Ireland are the host nation or something. Who knows? Sunday, we've got... let me just run you through this all quickly. 9 o'clock, Italy-France women's. I think that could be a proper banger. Poland-Lithuania mixed. 11 o'clock, Switzerland-Denmark open and Spain-Israel open. 1 o'clock, Sweden-Spain women's. Finland-Slovakia mixed. 3 o'clock, France versus Netherlands Open. I think that could be a sneaky, spicy one. And Great Britain, Ireland mixed. Again, 2 of the title favourites slinging it out there. Belgium, Norway mixed at 5, as is Sweden versus Slovenia Open. And there's all sorts of things going on the VO fields as well. You can find the full schedule on the tournament websites. But games I might be keeping an eye on from the VO streams. Netherlands, Austria Open at 11. Czech versus Netherlands women at 1. And both 5 o'clock games. Hungary versus Latvia in the mixed division, and Great Britain versus Austria in the open division. But no matter where you're from, no matter what your rooting interest is, there's bound to be some games that are properly interesting for you. So I cannot recommend just going and finding it out. Maybe going for, I was going to say dual screen action. Nah, let's get a good old quad box going. 4 games at once from Sunday onwards. You lucky, lucky people.
Aren't they back home? They get to consume all this from here in Limerick. We're happy to be here, despite what the weather might be. Sunny Limerick or not. Very happy to be here. Excited to be in Ireland. Now let's get on to some talking points here. We're here to talk about what we're a little bit excited about, what we're keen to see in throughout the course of the week. What are some of the games, some of the storylines that are really getting to us, that are the excitement of this tournament? I think we're going to start with Charlotte Terrasson. Charlotte, tell us a bit about what's got you excited here.
So I'm really excited to see this week how Italy mixed is gonna perform, because we've seen them in Windmill already, so we have a bit of idea. We saw that they did pretty well against other national team, surprising most of us by winning in quarterfinals against French mixed, which were like supposed for everyone to be in final. We all imagined them going final, and Italy beating them was really surprising. And and oh,
High class production values.
Nobody noticed a thing. Tokai is there.
okay, got our back. And so yeah, I'm really eager to see what is going to happen this week, knowing that it's not only a weekend tournament but a whole week long, and knowing that they have a very young roster. I mean, it is an under 24 team going to the elite division instead of going to Nottingham in the U24 mixed division. So this, I think, will be interesting because it's other.
You're struggling out there, aren't you, Milan?
Schmidt.
Oh my!
All the wires here, man. You can.
He's a connected man. Thanks for the setup.
So exciting stuff. Anybody want to touch in on the Italians here and how they're going to look playing elite as under 24s?
Yeah, I think that is an interesting point. On the other hand, we haven't really seen anything from Italy in any of the single divisions yet. We haven't seen Italy women or men's teams on any of the preparation tournaments, right? So what Italy will bring us this tournament, we don't know yet. We'll just have to wait and see for tomorrow and the weeks to come.
Any others to chime in on the Italians here?
Yeah, the thing is, even though we mentioned it's an under 24 team, like, it's not necessarily, you might think, oh, so there won't be any players we're that familiar with. No, they've got some legit studs on that team. I'm thinking just about on the open side that got to the semi-finals at under 24s in London last week, like David Barzazzi. I think like the secret is well out on him. I was so impressed with how Andrea Fantini performed.
Yep.
I thought he was really, really good, and the two of them will do a lot of handling work. He wasn't at under 24s last week, but in the past I've been really impressed with seeing Joshua Poltok play. I know, very Italian name, but he's got a bit something about him, and like Italy doesn't really have a tradition of mixed, I don't think. But if you look at kind of how they've done internationally, Alligators from Massey, so it's kind of one of the other Bologna teams, like they got 17th in mixed at WUC last year, and that kind of flew under everyone's radar. So there is a lot of good young talent in Italy that I think people are sleeping on, and that are keen to play mixed and maybe kickstart an Italian mixed, yeah. Thanks Will off mic. Yeah, an Italian mixed revolution.
Also, I think that we're not used to see a lot Italy in mixed because usually the big house in Italy is obviously Cus, previously Cus, that is
Formerly
now
known as.
BFD, and they mostly play open in women. But in Italy, they have also strong mixed team like Torino, who did amazing on the beach championship, getting medal in Portimao, but also in the master in Limerick, they went and got some medals in mixed. So I think now that we will see in this mixed team other clubs that we might not be used to see and players who are more used to play mixed.
La Fiata, another name there that's one to watch out for. And
Yeah.
of course, watch out for the bench boss there. There will be some tight leash coaching from that Italian mixed squad. Christina, let's hear what's on your mind going into this this week-long tournament here in Limerick.
So we've looked at the pools really closely in preparation, and what we all of us noticed is that Germany, France, and GB are the favorite to make the top four in every single division. And not everyone might be a fan of that.
Why would you say that?
I don't know how I got that hunch, but apparently that's the fact. In any case, these nations have been at the top of Europe, and we'll see who can maybe can someone take a full sweep, get every single division, or will there be a mix of things? There's different things to consider. Germany doing very well last year at World Games, and GB not being defeated in some divisions ever.
GB not being defeated ever in mixed, which is incredible and will not last through this tournament. Thank you very much. And of course, I believe GB, the only one they haven't won is the women's division before.
I'd have to go back through the archive. Certainly they haven't won it the last few times. But, yeah, the thing is, I think GB Mix could potentially lose games along the way, especially with but with the format, you can lose games and still win the whole thing. That's not the be-all and end-all as it used to be, perhaps, in the past with some of these formats. Talking about the formats, I'm just going to spin this in here. Going back to mixed, the draw feels a bit lopsided, I think. France, they don't have the toughest pool, and they also don't cross over with one of the other tough pools. So potentially, the first half of the week, they're not going to necessarily have that high level of competition. So going into the bracket, are France going to be well rested or untested? That is one of the big questions I have going in this week. So I'd be interested to hear what all of you guys think.
I'll have a quick take on that. I'm not sure. I do like I love how you put that well rested or untested. It's the steel sharpening steel, iron sharpening iron. Are they going to be deprived of that? Or are they just going to be happy enough with the walk through into a quarterfinal? They can kind of get there. They can rest things. I think it bodes well for them. They've got enough veterans on that side. They're a team that can afford to keep a couple players on the bench, keep them well rested, and hope that they can fire because of their experience later in the tournament when the big games come. It is something we'll be keeping our eye on to watch. But yeah, I mean, my take on that is I think it could, if there's one team of those favored four that could bode well on that side, I say France could use that schedule to their advantage.
And this might be the Limerick coming out of me, think that there's something very formative to getting punched in the face. And I would be worried because there is a certain attitude that can kind of slip in when you're making your way up there. And there's only so many times you can say to everybody, be ready for it. It's coming, until you're 3-1 down. And in these conditions, there'll be something to talk about a little bit later on, but in these conditions, it can be really tough to make that up. I mean, it's stop-start. It's going to be some influential inclement weather at the least. And that can just cut off for a little while, and all of a sudden you're 3 points down in a game where it's an upwind, downwind game, and now it isn't. And it's just really hard to make that back up.
So they have to lose now. They don't have Instagram, they cannot win.
They let their talent speak on the pitch, not on social media. I'm sorry that we don't all need constant gratification. Some of us get by through self-confidence.
I thought you weren't here.
If your win is not shared on the social media, does it even exist?
Did you
I
even
mean,
win?
We're in 2023, folks. You have to share everything, or it doesn't exist.
It does exist if ULTI.TV film it.
That is social media.
Let's hope we go into finals then. So I wanted to jump on that point with weather. I think looking at the conditions, it could be anything during that week. It can change in seconds, as you already mentioned, as being the local person who should know about the weather. Logan, thank you. And I think, especially for national teams, there is a big difference because people might not know each other as well yet. They've played training camps, they've practiced together, but not as much as a club team have. And I think, especially with tough conditions, zones, and changing weather conditions as well, this could really change the flow of a game and the odds in every single one of those games.
Lorcan, do you want to speak on the weather a little bit more? Or?
Well, that's something I wanted to bring to the group and just questioning, because people talk about it being a great equalizer, and all of a sudden, like, your athleticism is not as critical because it's so difficult to get that separation. You're relying on a couple of talented throwers, and then everybody else is just hustle. And hustle is something that, like, teams, especially teams are here to prove themselves on an individual level, teams that are here to prove themselves on the international scene, will bring in aplomb, because when you have no expectations, the best option you have is to hustle. But do you guys think that it stands, that it is something of an equalizer, or do you think it's an exaggerator, and all of a sudden, instead of losing 15-5, you're like 15-2 because you can't throw it 2 meters outside your own end zone?
I think the most I've seen, and you kind of hate to admit it at an elite level like this, but I do believe it's still an equalizer. I mean, we've seen it at Elite Invite when there was a lot of wind and burn. But we've seen it throughout the season in many hectic weather locations, but it does end up, there's a lot of games that you can just really play the old punt and pin, a little bit of field position, get it out of your end when things are hectic and there's a tight defense on. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's where the veteran savvy helps. I mean, a lot of the teams we see, these rosters are getting younger and younger, and that makes perfect sense. But having a couple of these old heads on these teams right now to deal with inclement conditions is, again, something, maybe I'm just talking as an old guy here, but it's something that may well get them out of trouble if this Limerick weather stays what we're expecting for Limerick weather. So my take on that is, yeah, I think it can still equalize a little bit more.
I mean, a lot of our crew were out here for World Masters clubs last year, around the same time of year, and I think we experienced pretty much every weather that week. I have fond memories of commentating one of the Open Masters semi-finals in just some of the most torrential rain I've ever seen. I thoroughly enjoyed it just because it was so ridiculous. But I think the players and certainly the fans watching from the sideline were maybe less enthused about it. But it is a bit of an equaliser. Like, we have a lot fewer teams this week than we had last year, which means that there is going to be more scope to rotate through the pitches and rest them up, and there will probably be some kind of schedule changes throughout the week to adjust for that. But yeah, I mean, the fact that the pitches themselves get more of a break, I think, is useful, because it means theoretically you're getting less of those games where the field's a bit of a mud bath and it's very boggy, and as Lorcan mentioned, you are struggling to kind of get that first step explosion that a lot of these athletes have.
I would agree. I think it's really hard to talk about equalizing or emphasizing one or the other team. It's more about maybe switching from just skill to mental toughness as well. As long as you can chill and think, like, go over your mistakes again and, like, ignore them a little bit, find a way to redeem yourself. This can change the mentality of your team. On the other hand, when you like let that pull you down, the one mistake or the bad weather in general, it can help your team lose that game and lose enthusiasm. I think like that this is something especially national teams have to consider, like, keep energy high and try and stay on the same level.
It's the biggest thing with the weather, and sometimes people overlook it because you just start focusing on technical skills, you start focusing on experience. It's the biggest thing. Is just how miserable it gets and how it can propagate. Like, that can just seep into you. No, I mean, like, in terms of an emotional level of your team, it just starts to run through you, and you're like, wait a second, why is this what I did with my year? And at that point, it's a real thing, and it spreads. And teams are going to be able to cope with that. Teams that have maybe some of the more experienced people, for lack of a better term, old heads. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I personally think that the teams that have that edge in terms of experience, the teams that have people who've been there before to an extent, are going to be at a significant advantage.
Yeah, I like what you say there about the overall weather and how it has an effect on the mentality and your willingness to go on. I look what John Dock says in the comments here too. Upwind, downwind is the equalizer. Crosswind does the opposite and may be the separator. And I think there's some validity to that. Well done, new pops, John Dock. Shout out to him and Rachel Toshnerova in Czech watching, of course.
Yeah, I'd like to send a message to everybody watching, and especially to their beautiful new child, which is never listen to John Dock.
The voices you hear on the YouTube in the background are your extended parenting, Aaron.
It's interesting because how many games have we talked about where there's a thrower's wind, right? And it's like there's a decent breeze, like you just can't get lazy with it. But we could get proper winds where not even throwers enjoy it. But you see what he says about the upwind, downwind, because I think probably over the course of our various Ultimate careers, we've all had those games, and essentially you've got two teams sidelining the toss because getting the downwind is so important. Whereas with the crosswind, it's kind of affecting both teams equally each point. And yeah, there is the technical adjustment, there's the mental adjustment, and there's also the strategic adjustment as well, right? Most teams here will have non-playing coaches, and generally I find when the conditions get worse, those are the times when they really come in because they can maybe look at things a bit more objectively and holistically.
Yeah, wonderful. Let's bounce around a little bit here. Let's talk about disrespecting some teams. We're really good at doing that.
Oh, yes.
But there's a few topics we've kind of bounced around in the pre-huddle before getting on air. Let's start with GB are not everyone's favorites in the mixed division. How is that, and explain why that's something? Benji, why don't you start us with that?
As the resident Brit here, I will take this as a shot across the bow. Don't worry, Logan, I won't reveal your secrets. Yeah, I mean they've never lost a game at EUC GB mixed. Like, that is remarkable. The fact that to not even just drop one somewhere, maybe in an early pool game while you're tuning things up, or maybe you've sewn up a pool and you're resting some players, as you do see happens, like this game doesn't actually mean anything, so you take some of your big guns out of there, get them a chance to rest up. But they just, for whatever reason, they just have not had it. They've had that relentless winning mentality, and at times they've looked brilliant doing it, and at times, like if we all think back to the final in Hungary last year, it's been in pretty bizarre scenarios, like a gender mismatch on the final point, and then Rachel Turton breaks her arm on the winning catch. Like, that's just some weird Frisbee, right? Let's not pretend that it isn't. But there is an art to sometimes winning a little bit, not dirty, but a bit ugly, like just finding ways to get it done. In the build-up, GB have not been perfect. They have dropped games, but sometimes it's good to lose those games in the warm-up because it does find out, oh, actually, we're not doing this well. Like, maybe we're not utilising our female matching players in the game plan well enough. We struggled against these sorts of defences. Like, maybe those losses in the tune-up will be good for them, or maybe they can drop games along the way and still somehow win the gold medal anyway. Who knows?
I would definitely agree. I think the field is wide open. Anything can happen this week, and I think we've established that as well. To GB Mixed, especially their Frankfurt invite, the games that they played there, they were with a very minimized roster, and I do feel like when we saw them again at Windmill, it showed that the team was not quite on top with their connections, especially like one-on-one matchups. And I felt personally that they could have they looked for the same looks again and again, and I missed a bit of the versatility that I know every single one of those players being chosen for the national team have. And I don't think that really saw those connections yet. I can imagine very well that either they have built or they will build them over the course of the week.
I think they have 9 returning players from last time, so that's a lot of the squad that you've got to try and work back into it and keep pushing forward. But there's an awful lot of talent on the side, and I think they'd be very capable of doing it. They've got 3 of the World Games players. And as well, making the trip down from Scotland, I'm just a huge fan of Cam Agnew. I think he's absolutely stellar and will be very impressive in these conditions.
I think maybe one of the biggest obstacles for GB this tournament is, in the past, a lot of countries I think have maybe prioritised going single gender, but the mixed division this year is absolutely brutal. Like, I think lots of people have 4 teams penciled in for the semi-finals: Great Britain, France, Germany and Ireland. And then you're looking at it and think, well, we've seen Italy win big bracket games like they did at Windmill. Like, you look at the talent on that Latvia roster, if they can get it clicking in a bracket game, they could absolutely do some things. Like,
So you're justifying the disrespect then?
I'm saying that maybe we're being maybe a bit too disrespectful.
Yes, he's justifying the disrespect.
You see where it comes from. Like, it's not even necessarily disrespecting GB as much as it is respecting who else is there. Like, there is some real talent in this division.
Yeah, absolutely right, Benji. Speaking of disrespect, I think the other team that we noticed is probably not getting their due respect. And we look at rosters, and it was 4 years ago, but 2-time silver medalists in the women's division. The Swiss women are at the bottom of a lot of lists. Shout out to Ian French. He's been doing some great reviews. Loved reading his stuff. He's got him in that bottom bracket. We are kind of not really bringing them up in the top bracket. Is this fair to keep the Swiss down there?
I mean, it is definitely disrespectful, given they won, as you mentioned, they won silver in the last 2 times out. They lost to Finland in Copenhagen in 2015, and of course, some country called Ireland in 2019 out in Gert. You heard of it, Lorcan? But he's having a good thing. This is a lot. This is a lot for him. I think we are disrespecting them, obviously, because I don't think anyone's really talked about them as a medal contender. There has been a lot of turnover from 4 years ago. However, I'm going to keep disrespecting them because at the moment, I don't see them as a medal contender, to be honest. But they've shown form in, getting those silvers in the last 2 events. So having that tournament ability to win the games that matter, it's a real skill.
As you can see from the pool there, as my Vexiology is put to the test rather quickly. Just to switch it briefly to respect, I think you got to look out for the Czechs. I think they're going to be very impressive. You saw they pushed France really, really close in the Windmill final. They managed to beat Belgium. Their pool game versus Netherlands, I think, is just going to be so exciting. And to an extent, we talked about like how, the first pool is almost like a reseeding event. And then, don't worry, it was empty. The first pool was a reseeding event, and then the second pool doesn't even carry through to the power pools. But that matchup is going to be one of those ones where you're like, okay, how does that play out?
Well, we're into the women's division here. Anything now let's talk a bit more about it. Charlotte, anything on the Swiss? Anything on dark horses?
I will stay again on the Italian, sorry, but that's what I was thinking about. The thing about women is that we don't know much about them. We haven't seen them, as Christina said earlier. And also, we know that the roster is pretty different of what we've been used to see with the Italian women team, especially, again, the big house. We keep talking about them, but the Coos BFD, which a lot of players stopped playing, actually, or for several reasons. So we see it already with the Shout roster that a lot of young talents joined the roster for the Shout team. And I think the same is happening with their women national team, where a lot of younger players are coming, but also different clubs. So it will be interesting to see how this will affect their game, what result they will get. Are they going to win? What was it in the quarterfinal they lost? They got 5th or 6th.
Yeah, they lost the quarterfinal against. No, they won the quarterfinal against Germany, and everyone thought the Germany women's team would win, and then they lost to the Swiss in the semifinals.
Yes, so it would be interesting. Exactly. So it would be nice to see how this mix of clubs and the young talents also joining will affect their game, and if they will be able to do better or worse this year.
So I would definitely agree, and I think Italy is my 4th guess in the women's division, like making the top 4 maybe, but we'll see, and we haven't seen them yet. And I think that the Czech Republic could really be the team to upset Italy because their style is so similar. What the Czech have been showing us this season, especially, is these give and goes, small passes, and like very quick on their feet. And I do think that the team 4 years ago of Italy could have stopped that with the talismanic presence of Anna Ceschi and of course Laura Ferolfi, Scalerini maybe as well, and Irene Scazzieri, who is back for now, I think.
She's back.
But she hasn't been training with the team, with any Italian. Back from the US, playing with
San Francisco
Rory for the season. And I think that the Czech are so well matched and so sure of themselves now in this season that they could really test the Italian women's team to get into those top 4.
Yes, I think it will be an interesting game to see if Czech meets Italy in the women. See those quick give and go passes in the handling.
Anything else to touch on?
Well, yeah, just to reiterate what Charlotte was saying about how effective that's going to be in these conditions as well. But I thought, because we mentioned their name came up there and we haven't mentioned them yet, if we're talking about the women's division, we have to talk about the Germans, right?
Yeah, I mean, they seem to be everyone's favorite. Is this a tournament for second place?
But they were the favourites 4 years ago, and they were arguably the favourites 4 years ago before that. Can they finally get that gold medal? Because, as we mentioned it, like that bonkers quarter-final loss to Italy, where they were 14-10 up, I think?
14-11.
14-11,
certainly,
yeah.
I remember.
And then, and only to have the Italians kind of claw it away from them. Like, you look at the talent on this roster, and, I mean, it should be a dead cert for a medal at least, and I think they are kind of justifiably favourites. They won the windmill final against France in, kind of a reasonably convincing fashion. But if the weather gets ugly, a lot of those players, like we've seen in the women's club scene this year, like at Elite Invite, Jinx really struggled to take apart Yaka's zone, for example. They made a lot of passes and went kind of nowhere with them. And if the weather is awful, I think teams are really going to look to see if, okay, can they grind their way through these long points?
Yeah, all to be seen. A couple other talking points. We'll talk about some players a little bit here. Some that will be back. the sock show, as we get the sock show there. Some players that will be back.
Normally we have to charge people for this sort of thing.
Patron only.
Sockwrestling.tv.
That's really late night in Limerick.
Where are we going here?
Don't we technically own the Sock Wrestling Instagram?
I think we own a lot of things in the anyway.
Yeah, we do. We own it all. Let's get back to business.
Back
here,
on script.
ladies
Back
and
on
gentlemen.
script.
Players who will be back that we maybe haven't seen so much of, and we're starting to get glimpses of in the lead up. But Holger Beutenmüller's been gone for a very long time, and he's back. Before he left, arguably the best in the conversation to be one of the best in Europe. PJ De Mulignari had a long stint out post-COVID and with some of the ailments that went with that. He is back and on one heck of a team. He's got himself around him over there with the Belgians. We can talk about other divisions, but what do we think about those two? I mean, we can talk a bit about Germany and Belgium specifically, how those two might reintegrate. What does anybody think here?
Well, I think if we've covered like mixed and women's, it'd be nice to move on to the Open final. There's only 4 countries that have ever made the final of the Open division, and that's Sweden, Finland, Germany, and GB. And there's a chance that none of those teams make the final this year. It's a pretty long chance, but it's certainly something that shows just how much other countries have raised up. And like you said, Belgium there, and you're talking about PJ, and like it's great to have him back. And obviously, it's wonderful to see him on the pitch. How much are we going to see him on the pitch? How important is he going to be to their success? He's gone from being like vital to almost extracurricular, and to that extent, like it's all going to be about the young talent and how they're going to be pushing forward from the position. A lot of them played in under 24s. Is that going to weigh on them as well?
Yeah,
I was just going to say that with people coming back from, obviously PJ's coming back from injury, I think he's going to play a lot bigger role than he was going to this time last month, because of course Belgium lost Ref Yonkers and Christoph Phillips to knee injuries at Windmill, so they're not going to be playing this week, which is, I mean, Ref especially, I think everyone knows what he does whenever he's on the field, be that on defense, kind of taking out big defenders downfield, big receivers downfield, or like opening things up with his throws or trying to stretch it going long as well when they try and push him deep. Like, those are big losses. In terms of if you want a deep threat especially, PJ offers that in spades.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think what we can say for both the German and the Belgians, they have a lot of talent. Their top 7 is very, very good. For Belgium, we'll see if that decreases by a lot, having one very important player missing, or if the rest of the team can maybe push up and like step into bigger roles. For Germany and Holger, to add to the second person back from injury that we talked about, I think that Germany Open team has shifted over, like it changed a little bit. The coaching is new. It's Berlin's coach, so Wall City's coach that's also coaching the German Open team, and there were more players that have developed over those 4 years during COVID and taken on bigger roles. It's not on the shoulders of Holger Beutenmüller or any individual, really. This German team has like broadened their roster by a lot, and I think it's a different game now.
I don't know much for the Germans, but on the Belgian side, indeed it's a big loss not to have Ref, who has a major part to play on the team, but still I think there are plenty of players on that team that are used to have these kind of roles on other clubs. For example, on Gentle side, who have a lot of them are on the roster. A lot of those players are also used to take responsibilities and be present on the field a lot. And also those the young players, as we mentioned, the U24, a lot of them had a big impact on the team, U24, and like a lot of responsibilities. But even also on the open team elite, they still have responsibilities. Not that kind of young players who will take more, I don't want to repeat responsibilities, but like play more and do more for the team on a younger team. But they do it anyway, whether it is the club or the elite team. I feel that they do have their spot on the team and do a lot. So I think they still will do good, and that these players will still keep their position and just keep on rolling. As I was talking with the earlier with the Declan brothers, they told me we're still fired up even after Nottingham, and the train is still rolling, the choo-choo train. So can't wait to see this one.
There they go. There they go. There they go. Uh-oh. Are we all on board? I think the other thing to mention, Idis here in the crew just tipped us off before the game. Coach P.A. Alamin of Belgium has had a heck of a record this year. Has not coached a team that has not made it to at least a final. That goes to his Belgian squads, his Mooncatcher squads, playing some lower division, I think women's division teams as well. He's taken straight to the championship. So, I mean, they've been making some big differences just having a coach. PA himself has been, I think he moved himself out of a player role where he obviously still wants to play and kind of pulled himself away from playing because he knew the team needed it. And, wow, it's paying dividends for the Belgians. There's a lot of talk about these Belgians. Who else are we talking about? There's a bit of chat about the Germans and the Belgians. GB, defending champs here. I mean, I'm really excited to see that France-Netherlands game on the stream. That's a big game coming up in the open round. A little bit of a preview we got at Tom's when Isno played the Dutch national team, both like Dutch national team in an infancy stage. Isno kind of putting a team together for Tom's. Before they kind of re-establish for EUCR. What else is exciting here, ladies and gentlemen, for the rest of this open division?
Dutch could be perhaps a sleeper for the semi-final, maybe, or I don't know. That's probably a bit too far.
I think the ceiling for them is the semis. Like, do I see them making the final? No, but certainly if everything breaks right, they've got the talent. I think if the bracket plays out that way, to make it into a semi-final. Like, I'm not just saying this because I'm wearing orange. Like, I think the talent is there. Do I think they will make the semi-final? No. But I think they could. Like, if it happened, it wouldn't shock me.
It would shock me a lot. I do think there's a big difference between the talent that we see in the open division top end and what the Netherlands have done so far or could do. Of course, I know some people are biased. Benji by his color, Milan by his origin, but
That's why he's cheering for Netherlands, for the boss.
Simmer down over there in the corner.
the boss is okay. Yeah, I don't think I see a lot of other teams go get that before them. I don't think we've talked about Italy in the open division yet, and there is no open club in the Netherlands that could compete.
I have one thing to say about the Italians, and it's right before Elite Invite, we did a show, and we didn't tout the Italians to do that well. And Giovanni Chopo Santucci has told me something about his questioning the opinions of the opinionists and the legitimacy of the opinionists. And by the way, we were right. You guys didn't do that well. However,
Got him.
However, this is a team that, wow, if you are not careful around them, I don't think they've got top to bottom depth. That maybe their club team La Fota might have a leg up in that top to bottom depth. But there are some household names there. You look at the top end of that roster, and it is the best that Italy has to offer. And some of these young guys, who knows, they can step it up. I would never count an Italian side out of the potential to semi here. Would I bet an appendage on it? Likely not. But I could definitely see them going as deep as a semi.
I think another team, if you want to talk about, fighting their way into the semis, you got to take France into account. Very young team, very exciting, lots of potential, and perhaps a little bit too early for them to make it all the way, but certainly a great chance for them to blood a lot of their players. Then when you want to try and look at what they've kind of proven so far, they handled Clapham earlier in the season, and that was very impressive and kind of was just a little bit of a snapshot into what they're capable of.
One of the big questions at U24s last week was France not entering. Where were France? And the decision was taken that they were going to prioritise performance here at EUC, and that also a lot of the players were young, but you picked up silver medals at U20 Worlds last year
In every division?
Yeah, in open and women. So even if they're a bit young, just put them out there. What's the worst that can happen? Give them experience. They might feel that they wouldn't do that well. It'll be a damaging experience.
And so the excuse was to not mess with the preparation for this tournament, by all accounts, by Discord. I think Guy Slen's been spelling it out here and there on the Discords. And it's so they didn't want to drag too many people into dual campaigns. They didn't want to not have the option of picking under 24s. So they better damn well perform
They are the polar opposite of Belgium, which stacked that U24 Open team, right? And France kind of did kind of the exact opposite. But you mentioned the way that they pantsed Clapham a little bit in that windmill semi, and I know that Clapham is not GB, but there is a lot of roster similarity, and obviously it was an understrength Clapham at Elite Invite as well, and they still managed to get to the final. But a couple of times we've seen a core of that squad not just drop games, but drop games heavily, and that's something that I don't think I can ever really have seen. In the past, they might have lost a game here or there, but they were always close. They were not getting beaten down like they have done a couple of times that year. That's a worrying inconsistency. If it happens earlier in the week, the way the schedule's written, you can get past it, but still not a great tendency to have.
Yeah, I was going back on that. I would definitely agree with that. GB have Clapham particularly have maybe had some roster turnover and not been as clinical and not as fearful towards having this beating a Clapham team.
The mystique is gone.
Yeah. And then I do feel like now this has changed a little bit in the mentality of players, and I think that makes a difference. And going back to the under 24s topic, I think 4 years ago, 2019, it was after EUC that we had World Under 24s, and we saw more players cross over play in both divisions. This year around, if you're European and you want to be part of a Worlds campaign next year, you have many teams have the rules that you have to be in on the European team as well. So you would prioritize EUC, and if you have that event second, the risk of injury is much higher in this one. So it makes a lot of sense for teams, coaches, or even the boards of federations to tell players not to play. Germany does that, for example. I think they restrict their players quite a bit. France chose to not even give the opportunity to do it, and I just personally know from Austria, some players were offered 2 spots and they could decide individually, and many of them didn't.
I just like to say that's a really, really good point, and also boo.
It's a little bit more of the well-rested or untested that Benji mentioned on a bigger scale. We got just about 5 minutes to go here, and we got a couple closing words, of course. Having a look at our comments there as we go, and we've got a couple other points to touch on. I don't recognize Israel as a legitimate state.
Are we getting political right now? Because I got several things I'd like to say about his earlier jab about Britain and me being British, because, and also that would allow me to tie it back into. I don't think we got to talk about Ireland mix nearly enough. Because incredibly talented team. You've got EUCF finalists coming from the men's side in Ranelagh, and then you've got reigning EUC champions coming from the women's side. So that is going to be a nice mix of absolute ability, total experience, and are going to be a genuine threat that's going to last through it. And of course, Ireland representing the whole island, but still represented by the tricolour.
And then mixed finalists in 2015 also?
Correct.
Yeah, we don't talk about that so much.
Mate, you made the final. It was as good as they'd done so far up until that point. I've got a good question. I think it's a good question, right? I want to talk potential breakout candidates, or like players that maybe we're not talking about now, that at the end of the tournament we will be talking about. I want to start with someone who I think caught a lot of eyes out on the 24s, and she's gonna just continue to hog the spotlight a little bit. I was so impressed with Charlotte Schall for Germany women's last week. She was incredible, and I'm excited to see her tear it up out here as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's no two ways about that. Ava Muller and Charlotte Schall over in the under 24s were a dominating duo in Nottingham. Charlotte Schall joins, I believe she's on the O-line of the German women's team. I saw their little Harry Potter hat Instagram post the other day separating O-line and D-line players, and I think I saw her there. But yeah, she was just doing a bit of everything, getting the disc back when it was not in their hand, but her ability to just be the constant reset, not shy to distribute to open players that are lateral or behind, and not shy to take the shots when shots are open and necessary. So yeah, that's a good one, Benj.
I'd have 2 then in the open division. I'm not sure really count. Like Meyer Bottling for Germany, I think is just incredible in the amount of times like I heard that said by every coach who had to go up against them, and it just not just that he's a big man. Obviously he's a big man. He's a big player on the pitch and is able to get a lot of stuff done. And then we're talking about another player who's really impressive under 24s for GB. Ethan Morel, I think, is another one who could really like step up and start to say like. So when people start to level at Germany and GB, they're like, those are some old rosters, because they got some young talent that's going to be very impressive. And to me, those are 2 of the real rising stars of those respective nations.
Amazing. I want to shout out Elliot Bonnet from the French team. We saw him on the beach in EBUCC, and he scored almost every point, or he was on for like 13 of 15 points. He had a stat. It was unbelievable.
At the end of that game was just Cyril Kayla hucking it to Elliot Bonnet, because the opposition, they just literally could not stop it. He would literally just catch the ball or pick it up after it hit the turf and just bomb it, right? Simon Ruel, I think he was also very impressive. He's playing mixed.
Correct.
In the mixed division, I'm going to be a little bit nepotistic and shed some spotlight on Slovakia, because we have 2 of ULTI.TV's own playing, Licia Pekarova and Philip Molnar. Phil might be a bit more people might be a bit more used to seeing him. Obviously, playing with Crit this season, was out of Worlds last year with Force Electro, and played for Netherlands U24 last week. And he and Sia are a phenomenal combo.
Amazing. We could go on all day, all night ad nauseum. Lucky for all of you, we will continue this all week long. A couple more days from here. Limerick Live from 55. We'll do this in the evening. Later in the week, from Tuesday onward, we'll have the tent set up on the hill. Come visit us. We'll be doing live interviews all weekend long. Any participant, we would love to have you there. Come share your insights, what's happening. And otherwise, we need to talk about Monday night. We got pub trivia happening at Stables the Pub. Come check that out. Hosted by the ULTI.TV crew, not just commentators, as it says on the ad. And I think that's about all for tonight.
I still need to write my questions for that.
Yeah, Benji's
what did we say?
Chop, Benji.
So pub quiz on Monday. Keep an eye for the Eurodisc Best Perspective streams going on from Tuesday, I think, and the EUF Diversity Showcase game happening on Thursday night. Have I got the dates right for that?
Absolutely, that is correct.
And I think that's a great opportunity for players who are kind of generally a bit underrepresented in Ultimate. Like, this is rich for me to say as a middle-class, higher-educated white guy, right? But the sport could definitely do with like increasing and showcasing that diversity, and kind of showcases like that I think are a good. It's not certainly the end point, but it's a decent starting point to kind of helping to familiarize some of those players in people's minds.
We're here for it all. Thank you guys for joining in. Thanks to this wonderful cast and crew for putting this together for us, for yourselves. Thank you very much. We'll see you from the fields from tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. Much love. Take it easy.
Lovely grab. Wow.